Good morning. We'll call the meeting of the Ag Policy Committee to order. Good morning and welcome, everybody. We have 3 bills on the agenda. Shouldn't take the entire committee time if we can move judiciously. See, we have a quorum, and with that, would Representative Daniels care to move the minutes from the January 11th meeting?
Yes, I so move, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Daniels. All in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Thank you. Representative Miller has an announcement to make.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to wait till the end, but I'll do it now. Members and anyone that else is interested in agriculture, we have a Day on the Hill coming up in February. Southern Minnesota Sugar Beet Cooperative, which is in my district. Wednesday, February 22nd, and there will be signs up for this. This is just your early invitation. Wednesday, February 22nd, from 9 to 11:30 a.m., 400 North in the SOB. You'll be seeing signs like this around, but sugar beets are very important in my area, as well as in North and some of the other places. So please come by and you'll hear what's important to them, and they're going to have refreshments there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thanks, Representative. First bill up for the morning will be Representative Quam. I believe he's here. Oh, he's ready to go. So Representative Poston, would you move House File 22 be referred to the General Register?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would move that.
Very good. Thank you much. And Representative Quam, go ahead. Let's hear about your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Basically, there's a situation that affects not a large number of people, but over the years, farmers have had to sell off property, and sometimes the farm homestead is not connected to the the tillable and the rest of the farm, and so that they lose a little bit of standing there. And it's not uncommon now with demographics of where farmers are getting in their 60s and they're transitioning the farm, and for a period of time they're renting out the tillable. And if they're renting out the tillable and they're not living adjacent to the farm, then they run into at times difficulties qualifying for the homestead treatment. So property taxes they've seen bump up. And the intent is, if the person on the property tax roll, or their family or their spouse or their family have farmed for 10 years, they don't have to jump through hoops. And if you've seen the flow chart and logic diagram, it's rather convoluted, so they don't accidentally fall off and have their property taxes bump up. And then I had one gentleman, he said, I don't want to be the one that sells off the farm to pay the taxes. And I think that this bill, while it doesn't hit a lot of people, it hits the fairness of people that have, and families that have run the farm, are still considered farmers. And the bill is actually probably shorter than what I spoke.
Representative Quam, I made a mistake here. We have to amend the motion, Representative Poston. This bill needs to go to the Property Tax Division. My apologies for that. So Representative Poston, could you amend your motion to send House File 40 to the Property Tax Division?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I would move that this bill goes to the Property Tax Committee.
Thank you very much. And again, all in favor of that change to the amendment, say aye. Aye. Motion passed. Thank you. Representative Quam, we've had this bill here before. I think it's a good bill. Any further comments or questions by members of the committee? None? Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
Representative Daniels.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Quam, is there any impact that you know of that'll be, I mean, it's a small scale, but I'm expecting from what the bill reads, very, very small impact on property taxes statewide. Is that kind of what you were thinking as well?
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Daniels. I anticipate it being very small. I'm hearing from the counties around me, one or two a year. There's another example of where the son lived on the farm and he got killed in a car accident. And through the process of having, another member who was going to live there, et cetera, the taxes bumped up. That's not quite what this is, but again, it's very small numbers, but it hits families. And to a farm family that's been running that farm maybe for generations, it means a lot if they're forced to sell off because the taxes are high. If it hits in a bad year for crops and rental rates are down, there just isn't the cash flow. And, again, it's more a principle thing as opposed to a dollar and cent thing. I don't think it would show up in the state budget. It'd be many decimal places down.
Gotcha. I thank you very much, President McCollum. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Representative Quan, it's interesting you bring the bill up today. I had a conversation over the weekend with a retired farmer back home where I live, and he is retired from farming and moved to town. And if I recall correctly, he had he had 3 parcels, about 50 acres that were in CRP, which he was getting $88 an acre. And he had a 40 and about 60 acres in another parcel. And he seemed very reasonable. He was renting the land out for about $60, $65 an acre to another farmer who hopefully could make a little money on it. So this guy, who now has lost his ag homestead because he moved to town, he owns 140 acres, and he said that when he finished paying all of his taxes, he was left with $15. So it's pretty much a break even. In his case, he didn't lose money, but not much there. So I think there's a need for a bill such as yours for situations like that. Anybody in the audience who would care to testify either for or against this bill? Come on down, sir. I think we saw you in the property tax division just a little bit ago. Welcome, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. I'm Stephen Baker. I'm the Ramsey County Assessor. We're the least ag county in the state of Minnesota, but I'm here this morning testifying on behalf of the Minnesota Association of Assessing Officers. I understand the concerns around, taxes for farmers in Minnesota, and I think assessors support equitable taxes. We have had for a number of years concern about the special ag homestead provision in Minnesota law, which kind of morphed from a temporary program to serve some flood ravaged properties up, I think, by the Red River Valley. It's one of the more complicated programs, if not the most, that we administer in Minnesota. And so for that reason, we stand ready, I think, to work with, revenue. The assessors stand ready to work with revenue and this committee, others, to see if there's an alternative way to provide relief rather than through this type of mechanism. It's just very onerous to administer. We're in a situation where we're doing land ties and property links between counties, between parcels, maintaining multiple parcel records for properties. I think one assessor told me they were up to 32 records on some of their ag properties. It's just really tough, and that leads to mistakes as well. So if there's a way that if tax simplification gets any traction in Minnesota ever, this is a program that's going to be, it was recommended by the Property Tax Working Group 4 years ago, I think, to be eliminated. So I think if we could start thinking about alternative ways to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish here, we would be best served.
So, sir, do you have any
what we've really talked about the most probably as assessors is there a different class rate that, you know, is between the homestead class rate and the non-homestead class rate that would work? And then maybe homestead goes to just the house, garage, and 1 acre, and all ag land goes at the same rate, and that rate is something that is workable. As I understand it, one of the concerns in the past is where that rate would need to be causes too much of a loss in tax base in some of the agricultural counties and communities. So I don't profess to know, you know, where that sweet spot is that would actually work. But we got a lot of smart people in Minnesota and people that are well-intentioned. I think there's a chance that we could come up with something that might be simpler to administer and still provide the relief that our farmers and property owners need and deserve.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Baker, correct?
Mr. Baker, yeah, Stephen Baker.
Yep. Yeah, I think good points you make. On the property tax division, I think every new member on that committee comes in with the idea of working on property tax simplification. We have like 56 different classifications, and I've looked into it, tried to come up with some ideas, and it's really difficult. These classifications are all there for a reason, and when you start picking and choosing and changing, you're going to make somebody happy and somebody not so happy. So, yeah, the whole homestead thing is complicated. The assessors have to do income verification in some areas to make sure you have a Schedule F and have a farm income. So, yeah, very difficult, but a difficult nut to crack. So thank you, Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anybody else would care to comment on Representative Quam's bill? Representative Quam, do you have any closing comments?
Just one, you know, bringing up that the whole thing was to have people that actually ran the farm or they were there, and that's why I borrowed the same language that's been around probably for many decades. On 3.12, the owner lives no farther than 4 townships or cities or a combination of 4 townships or cities from the agricultural property, except if the owner or the owner's spouse is required to live. You know, they're basically saying you're in proximity. And that rule works if you have the risk of being a farmer. So my advice to the people who have come to me is when you do rental agreements, have a portion of the rental agreement dependent on yield. So you have some of the risk of being a farmer. And that's some of the hoops you jump through to qualify. So this still is somebody that's right there. It's not like they moved to New York City and are still trying to get a homestead credit. But again, I'm open to all suggestions on how to improve it. I just, it tears at your heart, these individual situations that we hear about.
Thanks, Representative. If there are no more questions, Representative Poston renews his motion that House File 40 be re-referred to the Property Tax and Local Government Finance Division. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. And opposed, say nay. Motion approved. Thank you.